Welcome to the Vaxa Bureau podcast. Joining me today is a good friend and colleague, Brendan Cox. Brendan is the CEO of Legacy Brisbane. Brendan, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Todd. Always good to catch up and have a discussion about legacies. Topic near and dear to both of our hearts.
Mate, 100%. And for full disclosure, I must say I'm lucky enough to be on the board of Legacy with you and watching you create and affect some wonderful change, much needed for families of those who have served. But I'd love for you, Brendan, if you could, and for our listeners and viewers to give us an understanding of what Legacy is and those who Legacy support.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. It's a really important organisation within our community that is actually not as well known as many may think, certainly the older generation. The younger generation is not as aware of Legacy, and that's for many good reasons. Legacy itself was formed back in 1923 by the veteran community. And when you think about Australia in 1923, less than 5 million in population overall. We just returned from that horrific World War. 60,000 dead on the battlefield, 60,000 would die in the following decade. And today we know that 60,000 that died in the following decade, many of them would have had mental health issues associated with why they took their life after experiencing what they experienced overseas. So Australia then knew of Legacy because everyone was impacted by war. So the veteran community came together and said, how do we honour that battlefield promise? And this promise has not been made on just one battlefield in one conflict area. This promise to look after the missus and kids is a promise that has been exchanged between soldiers, sailors and air personnel on numerous conflicts, in numerous battlefields, in numerous theatres. And to honour that promise, the veterans, when they returned, formed the first Legacy Club down in Melbourne, with a sole purpose of looking after the partner and children of our fallen, which today we look after the partner and children of our fallen, but also the partner and children of our incapacitated veterans. And this is the new area that is challenging Legacy, which I'd love to explore a bit further with you. But so Legacy has survived on the generosity of the Australian community for over 100 years. No government funding for our services. I've had the pleasure of visiting numerous other countries talking about Legacy, and there is no other Legacy in the world. It's a great Australian story in which they say this organisation has survived for providing numerous services to numerous families over 100 years on the generosity of your people. So 100% it is, because Australians know that those who serve our country do some great service in arduous conditions, and when they fall, when they die as a result of that service, or if they are suffering from that service, we as a community must stand up.
It's interesting work that you're doing, Brendan, and that Legacy has done since that terrible war all those years ago. So you talk about service delivery. How are services currently delivered to widows or families of those affected or incapacitated?
Yeah, really good question, Todd. The way I explain this to corporates when I was speaking to them is we are Australia's largest family. When I first started Legacy 8 years ago, we had 99,000 dependents in our care. Today, it's just under 40,000 dependents in our care, as a lot of the World War II ladies pass away. But now we see the Vietnam generation of ladies coming into our care. But here in Legacy Brisbane, we look after 5,000 dependents. From Rockhampton in the north to Logan in the south and out west. The youngest is 6 months of age after a suicide about 2 weeks ago on barracks. The oldest is 106. She's still a member of the Queen of Leagues Club. That's where she wanted her flowers delivered. So it's a really broad parish of need. And to make sense of that from the business perspective, we break down to 5 program areas. We are known for our care to aged widows because we stay with them until they die. Our volunteer-based model of care involves a legatee, a member of the community. Any one of your listeners can put their hand up, contact Legacy and say, I wish to serve within Legacy. And by doing that beautiful act, we will allocate you women and children within your area in which you go visit, do socialisation, and just remind them that this country will never forget their service nor the veteran service to our country. It's a beautiful community experience. So we've got the aged care program. We then have young families constantly coming into our care. Most people listening will be very much aware of the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide. We are seeing the impacts of that, certainly within Legacy Brisbane. But also, last week, one of the soldiers passed away through a heart attack on barracks. His family will now come into our care in service. Legacy was formed actually around children. The theory of change back in 1923 is that if we could get our kids to school, or the fallen generation's children to school, keep them at school and get them on their pathway of choice, we have provided that sort of support to the surviving partner, the mum, so the family is somewhat restored with that legatee sitting to the side of them at any point in time that they need. So we have youth programs, youth camps, youth development opportunities, and we also look after our fourth program is people with disabilities. Once again, we stay with them until they pass because they have a unique lifestyle. The children we stay with until they're 26, and like any other parent out there, at that point, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet at some stage. So get out there and do your best. But then there is this fifth program, and this is the one that has really been driving a lot of our strategic thought and how we must adapt and change whilst retaining this solid, proven model of care of legatees, visiting our women and children in the community. But this family assist program, this fifth program, is where the veteran has returned. The veteran is suffering as a result of their experiences and their service to our country. And in Legacy, we advocate it is not a veteran in trauma only, it is a family in trauma. So now we have to prepare the partner and children for their new life, their new trajectory together as a family, teaching the partner how to put his or her mask on first before assisting the veteran. So this is an area where we use community service officers that we have here at Legacy Brisbane. It's got to be timely advice. It's got to be well-tailored advice. It has to be advice done in a collaborative community of care, not in isolation to other organisations. And that was a key learning for us back in 2018. We did a deep dive into the Family Assist program. I went to board and said, here's 2 reports. First report will talk about us as the organisation. We did great work. And we were keeping the kids at school. We were giving them their opportunities to go away on holidays and socialisation, meet other children in like circumstances. We were supporting the partner. But at the end of the day, Todd, we were not providing true social impact to this family because we weren't changing a day in their life because the veteran was not being treated by us. Because where we do partner and children, it's what I love about Legacy. It's an extension of my service ethos grown in the military days to now be delivered in my community days. So it told us we must collaborate. Back in 2018, we formed a steering committee with RSL, Mates, Open Arms, the Army, and we said, how do we do this better? Because we have to work together and wrap around these families in need as opposed to sending them out of our office to another organisation. They're the family in trauma. We have to respond to them in a more holistic manner. And that's the journey we've been on since 2018. And it's getting to an exciting stage at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Coxie, you're obviously really well positioned to lead Legacy. As you just mentioned, you've served your country with distinction. You're a Churchill Fellow. You're Director on the Gallipoli Medical Research Foundation. You're a member of the Queensland Government Veterans Reference Group. You're also a member of the DVA Core Advisory Group around aged and community service. How much has your lived experience and also those around you, like you said, some other people on the board as well, and how much has that helped shape the services that you're currently delivering to Legacy in your backyard? And how much of that do you think that other countries, like our close neighbours like New Zealand, the US, the UK, but also other countries in the Indo-Pacific, how much do you think they're watching what you're doing and what Legacy Brisbane is doing?
Yeah, I don't know how much fascination they have on me or Legacy Brisbane, but if they care for their veterans and their families, we can learn together. And that's a really critical element here, is that particularly those nations you mentioned, our Five Eyes partners, all sharing a light experience. And that's where the Churchill Fellowship was really impactful for me. So, look, the lived experience assists, but is not everything. And I've just had a constant thirst for learning ever since that 2018 discovery of our own program, which was not delivering to the extent that we sought it to deliver, and nor could we do it on our own. Because it was never about us. It was about the veteran and family presenting to us. And how do we wrap around them? And once we understand that the true challenge here is a continuity of care challenge, from a member being hurt within defence to them going through their transition period to landing in the community safely, as long as we all work together, I'm talking about the Department of Defence, Department of Veterans Affairs, the health sector, the social sectors, ex-community sector, service sector out here of the community, all working together on a better pathway to sustain continuity of care. That is the challenge. And it means we've got to stop talking about us, about what we do, how we do it, and where we do it, and saying, what do they need, where do they need it, and how do we deliver that for them? So the Churchill Fellowship was really enlightening, and to be very frank, Todd, it came at the right time for me because I was getting a bit exhausted. You know, I only operate in an area of influence outside of Legacy Brisbane. You know, we're dealing with some big organisations that probably move a bit slower than, of course, what I would ideally like, and to a degree, Legacy's in that flotilla. But the ability to go over and meet like organisations in the US and UK grappling with the same problem, you know, the lack of policy supporting the combined and coordinated service offering, the lack of collaboration on a truly holistic manner in which we combine the clinical outcomes required for this family, but also the non-clinical. And the non-clinical is where ultimately we're all failing by degrees. So the Churchill Fellowship to the UK really showed me how a system can come together better. And the Brits have implemented what they call Op Courage, Op Restore, and Op Community. And there's 3 levels of how a family will transition out. The Op Community is, you're fine, voluntary transition. We're just going to land you into the community, connect you to schools, your sporting clubs, and, you know, off you go. Op Restore is about when you are physically hurt and you require ongoing supervision, potentially operations to fix whatever broken bits you have, back, shoulders, whatever it is. And we'll place you into a clinical system in which we'll make sure that you are introduced in a better manner than what we are experiencing in Australia. You know, that's transition of medical documentation. That's identification of the GP, identification of the specialist, and so on. And then they have the mental health support in which they really connect them into their mental health systems, but have a very strong element of social support as part of that. How do we get them in a more positive mindset, connect them into their community properly, and give them a forward, hopeful focus? Whilst, you know, their defence service will always be in the rearview mirror, we want them looking at that front windscreen, which is bigger and more exciting than what they've already gone past. So, yeah, it came at the right time. And, of course, visiting the US has some phenomenal organisations, really complicated health social systems over there, of course, that constrain a lot of their support. But from a defence perspective, it's their only truly national health organisation. So there's some really good opportunities for the veteran community of 18 million veterans over there. But I visited an amazing organisation called Home Base in Boston, doing amazing programs and therapies. And the great thing is both the US and UK, all those organisations I visited, want to share their therapies and programs with Australia. That there's no IP holding here. It is like your veterans serve with our veterans. Some of them hurt, and those that hurt need good care. And here is what we are learning. So, yeah, it's really exciting. It came at the right time, and I'm really excited what we're trying to deliver here now in Legacy Brisbane and in Greenslopes.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of Greenslopes, mate, you've embarked on a very ambitious program to build a new legacy house, which is it's a big commitment. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it is a big commitment. It was certainly when we first started, didn't really know how we'll get to where we are today, but we knew once again the Australian community would wrap around us to deliver a new vision for good, coordinated, collaborative services to families transitioning out of defence in the light of a Royal Commission into defence and veteran suicide. So when COVID hit, we sold up our Legacy house here in South Brisbane. The driver there was, once again, we're community and corporate funded. Everyone was locked away. Our only concern was not about where do we live, from a business perspective at the end of COVID. Our only concern was to support families through COVID. So we sold here to retain that cash flow and deliver our services, which we did. And I have to note the Queensland government also kicked in $1 million at the start of COVID for our services, knowing that we are community and corporate funded. So that was fantastic. But it started in the light of the 2018 analysis, where we see a declining rate of our aged widows, and we got a really solid model of care through our volunteers there. We had this emerging need of the family assist, where a 20% year-on-year growth in the needs of these families were coming through our door. So we said, right, how do we meet these families sooner? Because at the moment, Todd, we're not seeing these families until they put up their hand, 7 to 10 years after they have transitioned out. Now, there's 7 to 10 years of things we are unraveling that we shouldn't have to unravel if we knew about these families sooner. Now we start seeing the need for Department of Defence, Department of Veterans Affairs, and the ex-service community on the one continuity of care pathway, focusing on their transition, not about their silos. So when we did the analysis, we looked at the history of Greenslopes, of course, being a repatriation hospital from World War II, but you looked at the capability that is there today, the amazing clinical capabilities and research capabilities of Greenslopes Hospital Precinct, which includes, of course, the Ramsay Private Health, Greenslopes Private Hospital, 700-bed facility. I had a few operations where I jumped ship. As you know, Todd, all of them were coordinated out of Greenslopes. It's when my family took me. Keith Payne Mental Health Unit, 31-bed facility. I have no vision today of the families taking their veterans there for specific mental health needs. None. And of course, the third great organisation you've already mentioned, Gallipoli Medical Research, dedicated to veterans and their families, understanding their needs, both in transition, in service, and in community. So the concept was really simple. This great clinical and research capability has to be mirrored with the social prescribing organisations of Legacy, RSL, Mates for Mates, and Open Arms. So now we're talking about this continuity of care experience. At the moment, that family comes into South Brisbane, tells their story with courage, with conviction, with pain. And my response at the moment is, partner and children, this is what I can do for you, but veteran buddy, you need to go to RSL, or mum and dad, I'm sending them around South East Queensland and they're the ones in trauma. So now they'll be able to go to Greenslopes. They'll be able to step in this one door at Legacy House, tell their story with courage and get the proper response where we wrap around them. And we also work with their clinical needs at a Greenslopes hospital. So when veterans will go in for their Keith Payne Mental Health Unit, mental traumatic state, we can say to the partner, are you okay? What are your specific needs? What's been happening here that we can assist you with? And how do we get your family on your right trajectory and work with you? So it gives us a greater opportunity to engage earlier with these families that are already in trauma. But even then, Todd, there's still one more step to be had. I'm still waiting for those families to go to Greenslopes. So I don't like that. I don't like sitting back and waiting for the person in trauma to see me. I want to get it right upstream. And the way that we're getting upstream is that we wrote to the Chief of Army last year. Once again, this is all evidence-based, very much how the UK are approaching this problem. But the welfare board system of the Army, and I'll focus it on Army at the moment, so I'm still understanding the welfare board system of Navy and Air Force. But the welfare board system of Army means that you'll be given a certain classification, which means you're too broken to serve in the tribe anymore. You can't serve in Army. It's called J5. And you live about a 6 to 8 month process now in which the Army must go through a series of iterations and working with you. There's no doubt there's some operations to occur, but to administratively discharge you from the military is about a 6 to 8 month process. Well, that was my experience, and would seem relatively typical. I wanted to meet that family when Brendan Cox receives his first letter from his welfare board saying, "Brendan, love your service. Awesome 26 years, but you ain't going on any further because your spine and shoulders are buggered." So that's when I want to meet these families that support, in this case, Brendan Cox. I want to meet Trace and the kids. So we proposed in Legacy Brisbane to the chiefs that we can create Army legatees within his military units, in which their sole purpose is to be our eyes and ears and identify those he sees in his family of 6 RAR or 7 Brigade or whatever unit it is, and to maintain their command responsibility to look after their people, is create this Army legatee that has the eyes and ears on them saying, "Brendan, I'm really sorry to hear you're getting out. I know you're probably a bit angry about that and you're going to fight it along the way. How about I'll work with your family and make sure you're well prepared in 8 months' time, you get that second letter saying that it's time." So this is the way we've trained up these Army legatees. We've got 5 Army legatees. We had another training session out at Stafford in 2 weeks' time, in which we're just trying to nurture their journey, equip them with the knowledge of how to connect to us. And ideally, we just navigate them into community, and through our peer support networks, we'll just keep checking in on these families to prevent the trauma that we are seeing coming through our doors because we're sitting back and waiting for them to put their hand up. So it's exciting. This is different to what has been experienced by veterans and their families to date, and it will be a critical outcome of the Royal Commission in identifying better pathways of care to our veterans and their families.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You just mentioned something then, Coxie, talking with the Chief of Army, and each service seems to have their own pathway. Wouldn't it make more sense if there was one pathway for all services? I mean, it's a bit like saying, joint operations, but why are there several pathways rather than just one?
Look, I think it goes back to, Todd, there's a lot of silos within systems, and I think sometimes creating those joint systems are difficult. I mean, even our technology platforms are different within services.
Yep.
This would appear to me to be a bit of a no-brainer. I think the Royal Commission will demand something more, like across all services. It shouldn't matter what uniform you put on. The way that Defence transitions you should be as empathetic as that organisation can do it. And I think just acknowledging that, people who serve our country, particularly over extended periods of times, particularly when they're exposed to traumatic situations, there is an obligation of the organisation that has put them through that to ensure that they transition warmly and safely. Now, we on the outside of the wire have a responsibility in that care pathway, and that's why getting inside the wire, them appreciating that it's not just an administrative discharge. If you want to recruit good people tomorrow, you've got to treat your people well today. So the Royal Commission has shone a light on, we had these new organisations, the Joint Transition Authority, a PERS division that's been stood up as its own entity. So I think Defence is aware that they can do things better. But a welfare board is a welfare board, regardless if it's on a ship, in an aircraft, or on a tank. This isn't hard. I think the difficult part is understanding where their responsibilities stop. And I put it down to the ethics of command, in which looking after your people is fundamental to being a good leader. And that responsibility doesn't stop as a person walks out the gate. It stops when that person is landed well, future-looking, and equipped for their future life.
Yeah. It's funny, mate. You touched on something there, like we as a community and the governments, we send these people off to war, and it is our responsibility as a community and a government to look after them when they come home. You can only do so much with the resources you've got and the funding you've got. You mentioned that the funding only comes from the community. how can people, if they're listening or watching, how can they get involved and help Legacy to deliver better services to those that Legacy serves?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So legacy.com.au takes you to both a volunteering page and a fundraising page, if I can be as bold as that. I would ask any listener to think, what could they personally contribute? And I focus here on being a legatee. Without legatees, our services cannot be delivered. It is our unique proposition to have a relationship with people in your community that are disadvantaged due to service to our country. How can you acknowledge them? Have a cup of tea with them. And that requires your time, and we're all busy. So there's the first one. That is the most powerful way that you can support Legacy, is by being in Legacy as a legatee. The second element, of course, is that financial support. And I just encourage corporations to think about what is their corporate social responsibilities, where do they wish to deliver impact, and how do they hold those organisations that they fund to account to demonstrate that impact. I'm very comfortable that any corporate out there that wish to support true social impact to the families that have suffered as a result of service to our country, come and have a talk. And I'll demonstrate to you where we make a difference in their lives. And it actually won't be me. I'll just introduce you to the kids on our camp, to the widows that turn up on a monthly basis. I'll allow you to go in those living rooms and you become a legatee. So that's awesome. But the other aspect, of course, is this has been a very ambitious project from the start, the new Legacy House at Greenslopes. Not only informing this collaborative community of care of RSL Mason Mace, Legacy and Open Arms in the precinct of Glyphly Medical, Greenslopes Private and Keith Payne Mental Health. But it's been ambitious because we wanted to raise every dollar from the Australian public. And once again, it's a commitment by them of in gratitude of the services that we deliver. So this is a $9 million project. And I remember the board saying, how are you going to do that? I said, I've got no idea. But I know Australia has always responded to a call, particularly in the light of a Royal Commission into Defence and Veterans Suicide. The need is evident. The change, more collaborative model of care has been called for. So this is, I would argue, Australia's first response in the light of that commission. So we are 8.4 million raised of the 9 million project. There is 600,000. I would argue to your listeners, fear of missing out, jump in early and find us that last 600,000. I would gladly accept that on behalf of the families in our care, but most importantly on the families I know I haven't met yet, who will be coming through that door. So, $600,000 is a lot, I get it, but the impact it will deliver will be phenomenal to those who serve our country.
And Brendan, you mentioned obviously corporates are getting involved, and Legacy have had some wonderful support from some of the corporates. Just to give those who are missing out and aren't part of the family at the moment, can you give us some colour as to who some of our corporate sponsors, some of the Legacy's corporate supporters are, and even some of the larger benefactors, if we can talk about them and the supporters more so, as well, just so that people get an understanding.
Yeah, so it's a constant challenge. So literally, I start the year with a zero balance, knowing I'm going to raise $4 million to deliver the services throughout our community. So there are some enduring relationships that allow me to start the year and say, I can do a kids camp. I don't have to worry because that's in January, so it's always a bit of a fear factor. But things such as the Brisbane City Council, Campbell Newman, set up a wonderful relationship in which the Legacy Way Tunnel, which I think is the only charity tunnel in Australia, created a system in which for 15 years we will receive as a minimum $100,000 a year into Legacy Brisbane to deliver our services in the city of Brisbane and beyond. So that sort of a relationship in which you make an enduring commitment that guarantees a kids camp, that guarantees these new camps that we are doing with Feel the Magic, which is particularly in a grieving stage, young families. Communication is actually one of the first casualties, particularly if it involves a suicide in which there's a lot of shame, blame, trying to understand why this occurred and this self-guilt grows. And of course, families can implode unless they get the communication strong and solid. So we, once again, are learning out of our programs, embarked with an organisation that does this to the best that we have seen, Feel the Magic. And so once again, a corporate can identify that's the impact that I'm willing to support. And I'll tell you what, Legacy, I want you to guarantee those families in your care for the next 10 years, they are going to have that experience because it keeps them together. So those relationships are critical to us. But then, of course, we also know we need to demonstrate our value to corporates as well. Why would you choose Legacy against a backdrop of many more worthy organisations? So we do take them on a journey. We have these programs we call the Backyard Assist, where we take corporates to the backyards of our widows. And for a day, you get to share as a community with 10 soldiers, clearing the backyard of a widow who's the veteran husband may have passed for 10, 15, 20 years. And you can imagine the state of the backyard. But think about that from that widow's perspective, who may be now between 70 and 80 years of age. And that is her world. So by cleaning up her world, you are changing the world one life at a time. And she gets to tell her story at the end of it. There's hardly a dry eye in the house. One thing, if you join Legacy, you are permitted to cry. It's always a prerequisite. And then we have other experiences because we are the charity of the Australian Defence Force, because we are there when the worst happens to them. Every time I deploy, I always told my wife, if I don't come home, go speak to Legacy. And I now know why I've made those statements. And yeah, so we provide other opportunities such as the Canungra Combat Challenge, a live army base, 21 obstacles. It sounds awful, but a great community experience where you bring corporates together for a networking experience and they can engage with us and alongside those families that serve our country, which of course gives us the opportunity to personally thank them, right through to wonderful relationships with organisations like NIAT, Australian sovereign capability, growing right here in Brisbane, who also understands that there's a consequence in their field when things don't go well for our armed forces. So they're an enduring sponsor of ours. They sponsor our gala dinner and many other events in which they can bring their community of supporters together as well in support of organisations like Legacy. So many, many, many means by which you can be engaged with us, right through to personal, those with personal wealth who are thinking about their end-of-life legacy, in their bequests. Once again, a great way to say, as part of my bequest, I want to make sure that, teenage kids get the education and training support they need. You tell us what you want us to do, and we will get on and do it.
That's wonderful, mate. That's wonderful.
Personal effort from every individual, within their capacity to serve their community. And that could be your local sporting club. It could be through organisations like Legacy or Rotary or Lions or many other good, worthy volunteering organisations. It gives you fantastic purpose. And part of the challenge we are seeing in restoring purpose in the lives of our veterans transitioning out is identifying their next community experience. So what I mean there is that when I hang up my uniform after 26 years, I didn't hang up the purpose for which I wore it. I loved serving this country. I couldn't do it because I physically got broken, but now I love serving my communities. And all Legacy provides to me is the vehicle by which I can express my service ethos in my community to those who are vulnerable. So I would encourage every listener to think about what is their pathway of purpose. If you haven't decided one, just come and join Legacy. We'll show you. Oh, I can never miss a plug. I'll put it this right here.
What's the web address again, mate?
Legacy.com.au, and we will connect you to your local Legacy club in your local community to serve your local widows and kids.
I love it. Coxie, mate, I really appreciate your time today. I'm just getting ready for that influx of inquiry and donations.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, mate. We'll look forward to catching up again, and love to have a chat to you once Legacy House is completed as well, and maybe we could get a bit of a virtual tour going on there too.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, Todd. And once again, mate, thank you for your support.
All right, mate. We'll talk soon.
Will do.